It's an extraordinary story. Even I found it quite shocking and alarming.
Because I've dealt with the police before, I wanted to make sure that I was in a position to record any conversation. Hello, good afternoon.
We would like to invite you in for a voluntary interview.
It's about a few tweets criticising Islam.
So somebody who's read those tweets has taken offence to them and made the report.
An archaic ideology that hates women and gays and marries kids. It takes everything backwards. It totally limits progress. I don't feel that has any place in a modern, free society, and I think I should be allowed to talk about it. Terrorism, public prayer. A lot of people are sick and tired of it, but feel that they can't say anything because they're going to be accused of being racist or Islamophobic.
We need to evidentially ask you some questions with regards to your intention when you made those comments.
I think we have to break out of that silence, because before we know it, there will only be silence, and we'll be absolutely doomed in this country.
Hello, welcome back to the Brendan O'Neill Show with me, Brendan O'Neill, and my special guest this week, Kellie-Jay Keen. Kellie-Jay, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
It's great to have you back on. You were on just a couple of months ago, actually, talking about all the craziness going on in our world, but I wanted you back on because you've been causing trouble again and getting into bother with the cops again. It's an extraordinary story. I mean, you think you'd be, not you, but you think one would be used to stories like this now, but even I found it quite shocking and alarming what's happened to you. So many people listening to this will have heard the police conversation that you recorded. They will know the general gist of this story, but tell us what has happened to you over the past couple of days.
So 2 days ago, well, about 3 or 4 days ago, the police wrote to me, and they asked me to provide contact details as if they couldn't find them. But they wrote to me at my house, and so I let them know where I was. And then, because I've dealt with the police before, I wanted to make sure that I was in a position to record any conversation. So when the police called a couple of days ago and I'm on holiday, I just said, "Oh, can you just send me an email so I know exactly who it is, and then call me back?" So in that time, I managed to record the conversation, and it's about a few tweets criticising Islam, and it's also what I said at Unite the Kingdom rally, which was also criticising Islam. And the beauty of the whole thing is the police read out my tweets in full, which I think are pretty impressive.
A tweet from the 23rd of June. We have Muslim fatigue, the gang rapes, the terrorism, the killing of little girls who enjoy music, the hatred of women and girls, the special courts, the anti-Semitism, the hate preachers, the marches, the violence, the call to prayer, the public prayers, the complaining about Christian preachers, the pauses in football matches, skipping lunch, the niqabs, the school kids visiting mosques, the Ramadan lights, the Ramadan messages on TV and by public figures, the cruel slaughter, the hatred of the West, the hatred of women, the barbarism, the inbreeding, the censorship, the two-tier system, the capture of our institutions, we're tired of it. Islam is a vile, woman-hating, cousin-marrying, child-rape-hazing death cult.
I listened to your recording of the phone conversation and I did laugh when I heard them reading out the tweets. It did make me chuckle. I thought, yeah, that sounds like Kellie-Jay's writing, actually. So, yes, there are two things going on here. First, there's Unite the Kingdom. Then there's a couple of tweets you sent. All of it relates to Islam and your blasphemous commentary about Islam. So Unite the Kingdom was the march organised by Tommy Robinson a few months ago, I think, earlier this year, at which you spoke. What did you say there that was apparently so offensive?
Oh, I said, get Islam out of the classroom, get Islam out of that building. Apparently that was specifically inflammatory. And get Islam out of every place of authority, which I think is fair and reasonable for somebody who wants to live in a free and tolerant society, to say that I want an archaic ideology that hates women and gays and marries kids. I think that's a fair thing to say, that I don't want that to have any influence over any part of my life.
Yeah. I think, and a lot of people would share that view as well. And then in relation to your tweets, the tweets were quite fruity. I did smile when I heard the cop reading them out in the phone chat. What was give listeners a sense, if they haven't heard it, what was the general tone of the tweets that you wrote?
Well, it said that we all have Muslim fatigue. And then I list the things that Muslims have done. And apparently we're not allowed to talk about people doing things. We have to talk about ideas doing things. And I'm like, ideas don't mean anything if people don't enact them. You know, murder is a really bad idea, but we're not going to be really so injured by it if people aren't being murdered. So I listed terrorism, the hatred of little girls who enjoy music, the hatred of women and girls, the cruel slaughter, the public prayer. And then I just did a very long list of all the things that I feel are incompatible with British culture. And I think we're all sick and tired of it. And I think a lot of people are sick and tired of it, but feel that they can't say anything because they're going to be accused of being racist or Islamophobic. And I think we have to break out of that silence as soon as humanly possible, because before we know it, there will only be silence and we'll be absolutely doomed in this country.
Yeah, when I heard the policeman reading out the tweet about Muslim fatigue, in which you talk about all the various things that have been done by adherents to the Islamic faith, terrorism and so on, I really was struck by when he said also anti-Semitism. And I thought to myself, hold on, are we not allowed to freely say that some Muslims are anti-Semitic? Because if the police are essentially saying that it's a problem to talk about anti-Semitism, then we have a serious problem in Britain in terms of what we are and are not allowed to say. I want to dig into the question of blasphemy and what we're allowed to say about Islam in a moment, but give us a sense of where things stand. So my understanding is that the police invited you in for a voluntary interview and you basically said, bugger off.
Yeah, I'm not going. I'm just not going. This will be my 5th interaction with the police, inviting me into an interview for my words. And then I also had a 4th for my words, once at my house for being untoward about paedophiles. And I'm just not going. They can come and arrest me at my house. Like, let's have a nice big fat story about this if they want it. Like, they can roll that particular dice. I'm ready for that. Bring it on.
And what's the likelihood of that? Do you from your own past experience or other people you know, what's the likelihood where if you say piss off to an interview that they'll come knocking on your door?
I'd say it was relatively likely. It depends. They're going to take it back to the CPS to see whether the CPS feel that it passes whatever criteria in, I think it's PACE code G, which says whether or not you can arrest someone. And I think because they've said that there is an intention as part of that crime, like what did you intend when you said those things, then they have the right to interview me under caution. And I'm more than happy to wait at my house until they come and get me, or off the plane. You never know.
Yeah, that's what we want to see. We want to see armed officers arresting Kellie-Jay off the plane. I did laugh when the policeman said we need to work out what your intention was, because I thought, hold on, isn't it clear that her intention is basically to have a pop at Islam? That seems pretty straightforward. But it was also quite surprising, or it will be surprising to some people, to hear that in this conversation with you, the police talked about malicious communications, the Malicious Communications Act, because some people will think that malicious communications refers to sending a communications directly to someone into their inbox or their email, calling them names or harassing them or directly targeting them for alarm and distress. But all you did was write down your thoughts and publish them. So people might not understand what malicious communications mean, mightn't they?
Yeah, I don't think they probably do. I think there's a chap who's in court this month for malicious communications towards me, and that included violent threats and pictures of his penis. So that is something that's supposed to upset me. And I think it goes back to the law when people would send things in the post, right? And I think we all agree that receiving something really egregiously offensive in the post is not very nice.
Yeah.
And even via email is not very nice. But this idea that we're in this realm of, how do you feel about that thing that's been done to you? This person's committed a crime, and then there's an added layer about how the victim feels about it. And I get it that some victims want to be able to speak, but I've been asked to make witness impact or victim impact statements, and I'm so annoyed that you think the law should be black and white and that's it. It's a crime or it's not a crime. I I don't think this should be a crime. I think I haven't directed it to anyone. I've directed it towards anybody who thinks that we should ignore the danger, the imminent danger I think Islam poses to us in this country. I think you and I have talked a long time ago about the number of people after Charlie Hebdo who said, well, what did you expect?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as someone who has had to deal with the police for receiving malicious communications a couple of times over the years, I find it just so egregious that the public expression of an honestly held opinion can be treated the same as receiving a genuinely threatening letter directed to you as an individual, which I have done. I'm sure you have done. Many people with supposedly controversial views will have received communications like that. You said there that this shouldn't be a crime, what you wrote. I mean, I could not agree more. In fact, I would go so far as to say treating it as a crime is repulsive and sickening and completely contrary to liberty, the fundamental tenets of liberty, because essentially isn't the thing you're being charged with really blasphemy, basically?
Yeah, of course it is. The United Kingdom stuff was discussed on some mainstream, like I think Piers Morgan. I think it was discussed in the House of Lords and in Parliament. Me saying get Islam out of that building, and I was very specific not to say get Muslims out of that building. I said get Islam. I don't want to see MPs in this country stand up and defend cousin marriage. I don't want to see halal slaughter being okayed when we already have our animal welfare laws. And I think it's about 25% of all animals slaughtered in the United Kingdom are slaughtered via halal. I think we need to know these things. We don't even have labeling. But yeah, the idea that a policeman can legitimately, not legitimately, but call me and try and intimidate me by inviting me into an interview for criticizing a religion that I just don't feel has any place at all. Well, it's an ideology and religion is part of it, but I don't feel that has any place in a modern, free society, and I think I should be allowed to talk about it. And just like, the Christian preachers, look, all this would be terrible if it wasn't also on the backdrop of Christian preachers being arrested and moved on in both Northern Ireland and in England, Wales and Scotland. We know that's happening. We know that it's, Christians are fair game. It's all right to have a go at those people and call them all sorts of things all the time and offend them and have, the Book of Mormon, have a whole, which I understand is a very good musical, but that's all right. It's okay to skewer them. But when it comes to Islam, apparently we've got to treat it with kid gloves. You're not even, it's okay even to potentially be stabbed when you're doing something to the Quran outside of an embassy. So I think we have a duty now, anybody that believes in liberty and freedom of expression and freedom of speech, we have a duty now to really push the boundaries of the laws that we currently have to make sure that they work for us. And at the moment, I don't think they do. And I think there's a hard push with this anti-Muslim hate crap that the government are trying to push through and have been quite successful. I think we have to push back very, very hard against that.
When I was reading up on what happened to you and listening to that phone conversation with the police, it reminded me that years ago, when the then Pope Benedict came to London, there were huge protests by atheists and secularists and lefties, and I remember I went to observe it, and they had placards saying "fuck the Pope," basically get your stupid religion out of our city, all that kind of stuff. It struck me that what you said about Islam was very similar to what they were saying about Roman Catholicism, and of course there were no arrests there. They're probably the same kind of people now laughing because you have been contacted by the police for daring to criticize Islam. So the double standard is gobsmacking. But I wanted to ask you about the question of punching down, because of course the thing that will be said about you, and it's been said about other people as well, the lefties will say that the difference when it comes to ridiculing Christianity versus ridiculing Islam is that when you ridicule Islam, you're punching down. You are a privileged white woman. Islam is a minority religion in the UK. Most of the adherents to Islam in the UK are black or brown people. So the argument, you've probably heard it yourself, is that criticizing Islam is punching down. What do you make of that argument?
Well, I will just tell them by 2050, a third of the globe will be Muslim. So be fair warned. And look, I don't much care whether or not it is punching down. I don't think it is. I think I have a right as a woman to criticize such a barbaric religion. And women across the world, well, for a start, I can't be punching down, otherwise the police wouldn't be phoning me. It sounds like I don't have the power in this particular dynamic. It sounds like they might have the power. So it doesn't work for that. But also, we have women in this country who should be liberated from Islam. You know, the biggest victims of Islam, one could argue, in the United Kingdom are Muslim women. They are the biggest victims. They are living under a big fat cloud of Sharia. Some of them just covered in a fabric prison. So it's really mad that I've had repeated conversations at Speaker's Corner about the fact that the man that they revere more than anybody else, the perfect man, married a 6-year-old and consummated that marriage. And I'm using that word advisedly, and I don't really want to, but I think we all know what I'm talking about, at 9. And I've heard supposedly educated men justifying that. Now, if the fundamental of your belief is that you have to justify that, like not even that agreeing that it happened, didn't happen, whether it would happen today, none of that, but justifying that as a fundamental principle of your belief system, I think you're in trouble. So yeah, I don't even care if however anyone wants to characterize what I've done. I feel as a woman who cares about women's rights, who cares about little girls and their privacy and dignity, that as soon as they start their periods, they have to wear a hijab, for all of the reasons that I think most of your audience will probably understand. I think we have to talk about it, and we just have to talk about it now. And as much and often as possible, let's make it not a dirty subject to talk about it, hush dinner parties, but let's actually start really talking about the reality. How does this country look once we've got 10, 15, 20% Muslim? How does this country look? Because I think it will be beyond repair. Once we get to about 10%, I think we're doomed.
Yeah, I agree on the punching down question, because I don't think it is punching down, because this is a global religion with 1 billion adherents, and it is the organizing force in many countries around the world. But then at the same time, if it is punching down, who cares? That's, freedom of speech involves the freedom to punch down if one wants to. We've talked about this before, but I did want to ask you, in the light of these developments, I wanted to ask you about the cowardice of many feminists when it comes to the issue of Islam and Islamism and the impact it has on communities. You've just said Muslim women are, in Britain, arguably the biggest victims of Islam, because every day now, every single day in that part of London where I live, I see women in the full niqab, their faces covered. I mean, it does seem to be becoming, certainly around my area in northwest London, it is becoming increasingly common. And I always find it unnerving that these women are shoved into the streets to do the shopping wearing a black cloak. It's not something that I think anyone should support or approve of. And yet on that issue, on the grooming gang, rape gang scandal, on various other things that should concern feminists, there's often just been silence. Is that still the case? Do you think that's likely to change at any point?
No, I don't think it's likely to change. I think the same women, it's the same mechanism as women wouldn't name men as men. It's very, very scary. I think what I've come to realize is that feminism is just a little club that women like to belong to, and almost not much else. And that won't include feminism of old, where they literally fought for, the laws around rape and marriage and domestic violence and, lots of things that they did. But now, a feminist is more likely to talk about mansplaining and manspreading and how terrible that is and how disrespectful that is. But they won't talk about the penis in a women's changing room. It doesn't make any sense at all. And they wouldn't dare to talk about, in fact, some feminists, when I've talked to them, they'll say, well, it's the same as makeup. You know, a burqa's the same as makeup. And I'm like, but my dad didn't say, oh, if you don't wear an underwired bra and some lipstick, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah.
You've brought shame on the family. It's not remotely the same at all. We all appreciate that we live in a society and we are manipulated, coerced, and persuaded to do things that fit in with the culture. I'm happy about that. But shrouding a woman in fabric so she doesn't feel the sun upon her face is not remotely similar. And I think it's a real cop-out when feminists don't actually talk about it. And I think what's really interesting is that since October the 7th, the number of feminists that have still not talked about violence against certain women, you know, don't be a Jewish woman and get raped, for goodness sake, because that doesn't really count. Don't be a woman in a burqa because your rights aren't the same. You know, it's racist to talk about you as a fully fledged human being. And underlying all of it, I guess, who knew? But those of us that get accused of being racist for talking about these issues are actually the least racist because we believe that all women are equal and we have fundamental rights that each and every woman deserves, irrespective of whether or not she's Muslim, black, brown, white, Jewish, whatever. I believe that all women should be afforded the same dignity and human rights as any other.
Yeah, I mean, what could be more racist than betraying Jewish women and Muslim women because you don't want to offend Muslim men? I mean, that's about as racist as it gets. I completely agree. A couple more things. I wanted to ask you about the public praying question because I saw a clip of you. I found it very funny. I'm sure other people found it very offensive, but I saw a clip of you reprimanding a couple of men who were praying, I think in Hyde Park, bowing down on Islamic prayer mats, and you were saying, you know, what the hell are you doing?
This is not what we do in this country. I'm an Islamophobe, I'm not a racist. I'm anti-Islam. Right. You can be here, except an anti-dominant. This is not what we do in this country.
Give us a sense of why you think this is a big issue. I mean, it does touch upon also your contact from the cops, because I've noticed more and more that when people like Nick Timothy, for example, criticize mass Islamic praying, whether it's in Trafalgar Square or a few days ago in Marble Arch, we saw a massive Islamic prayer. When he says that these are questionable acts, he's accused of racism, he's accused of being phobic. It's another area that's been ring-fenced from honest, free discussion. So give us a sense of why you have a problem with it, and I guess what your solution to public praying might be.
Well, I've got two problems. One is that the hypocrisy of my position. So I've been one of those people that said that there shouldn't be a buffer zone around abortion centres for someone to quietly pray, especially when they're just there. I think you have a right to do that. And that is because I think they've got a firmly held belief that abortion is murder. I don't share that view, but I think they have the right to hold that view. And then there's this other thing that is a flex of dominance. It is an exhibition. It's something that Muslims do not pray in the streets in Saudi Arabia and Qatar. Apparently, it's quite offensive in Islam to kind of make a spectacle of prayer, and that's what they're doing. And then you've got all these multi-prayer rooms as well, which deeply annoy me because we know that they're not multi-faith rooms. They're just Muslim prayer rooms. So in addition to that, a lot of Islam or Muslims are buying up old pubs and churches to convert to mosques as well. So there's something really undermining of our culture and freedoms. And I think, for want of a better expression, it's a bit of a fuck you to British culture. So I don't want to see men washing their feet and putting out many mats. There's about 6 mats outside of Speaker's Corner. And those men, you know, there's something about the prayer thing that they do that because then they think that they can't be told to move along. And it's a thing that they rely on the politeness of British people not to say, hang on a minute, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? And I want to be the person. It's like, up with this, I will not put. This is not what we do in this country. And I'm not going to let you do this unchallenged. And actually what I've learned since that event is that as a woman, I can literally block Mecca and I can make the prayer not work. So I will be doing a lot more of that.
That's a funny vision. Kellie-Jay just kind of blocking the channel between a praying Muslim and Mecca. Yeah, I hate that it's come to this, but because I'm generally a very liberal person in the traditional meaning of that word, but I am increasingly of the opinion that we need restrictions on mass public praying. I think we need restrictions on face veils. I've lost a few friends over these issues, but I do think the time has come to assert British virtues a bit more forcefully until we've got things back on an even keel. And I think that's where we probably need to go. My last question for you, Kellie-Jay, is, are you an Islamophobe?
Yes, very much. Yes, of course I am. I'd be an idiot if I wasn't. Maybe phobe is a bit of a misnomer because you have to be fearful. It's not irrational. There's nothing irrational about being worried about a religion that in countries where it takes over, and it's a globalist, expansive, colonizing force. I don't think it's improved a single country. And I have looked at this question many, many times because I like to say things and hope that I'm actually right and evidence-based. But I can't think of a single country that has improved. Certainly hasn't improved the plight of any single woman by existing in that country and taking over. It takes everything backwards. It totally limits progress. So I think, yeah, I'm an Islamophobe, if we want to call it that. Otherwise, I'm just a freedom-loving person that doesn't feel that Islam is compatible. And there's loads of countries. I would never say to someone, go home, but I would say to people, there's over 50 countries. If you want to wear a niqab, there are some countries where you can go and feel the full force of what that actually means, and you can go and live there. If you want to pray in the street, or you want to practice your religion, you want everyone around you to be Sharia, you want every single animal to be pointed to Mecca and have their throat cut with some sort of medieval prayer, fine, go and do that somewhere else. I don't want it in the UK. I'm interested in Britain. I love this country. It's a wonderful country with a superb history, and I think we should all be very, very proud of it. But we are letting it go quite passively.
Kellie-Jay, thank you very much.
Thank you.